But also, too, I mean, there was violence in your family, wasn't there? Your father was a violent man.
Well, yeah. No, saying that, I thought not any more than probably any other of my mates' families on our street. Do you know what I mean?
But that wouldn't be saying much, would it? Because, I mean, you grew up in a very tough neighbourhood.
Yeah, but it was the 70s, and this was before the New Age man was, you know, the trendy thing to be, do you know what I mean? There was, like... It was a violent time in the 70s anyway, do you know what I mean?
There's even been not changing nappies, your dad, and beating you up, for God's sake. I mean, that's what he used to do. He used to beat you.
Yeah, he did, yeah. But, you know...
And you used to lie awake at night, waiting in your bed and thinking, is he going to come in and whack me?
Yeah.
And you developed a stammer because of that?
Yeah. Well, how do you know all this?
See, and what really interests me is that people nowadays talk about sinker states and they talk about youth and they talk about the problems they have. But, I mean, you lived all that.
Yeah.
And you lived at a time when people were not as concerned, maybe, as they are now, at the very beginning of all that. And what fascinates me is how a kid with no hope and no future grows up. I mean, what was it like?
I remember being young, and the worst part for me was not... I don't consider my upbringing to be that different than anybody else that lived on my street, or any of the other guys that I used to knock around with who were my age. But it is kind of soul destroying, or it was in the 80s, when you're going to sign on with your dad, with your best mate, and his dad, and you think, you know, our dads haven't even got jobs, you know. So what hope is there for us? Do you know what I mean? So that in itself breeds frustration and non-hope, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But it's never... None of that has ever come out in my music, do you know what I mean? And my music has always been kind of pretty positive, you know, and I've always been fascinated by life, you know, that... I don't want to sound too... that's weird about it, but, like, every day I wake up, you know, it's like, it was great because something great might happen today. It wasn't kind of like... I wouldn't wake up in a negative mood any day, and I never do, you know. But, those were kind of rough times when there was no work in Manchester.
Yes.
You know, for not only for your age group, but for, you know, your parents at all, you know.
And drugs were around?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you got stuck into them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the difference between the middle classes and the working classes. The middle classes experiment with drugs. The working class just get stuck in, man. Forget experimenting with them. Let's just get them done. So
by the time you became a rock and roller, you were very well practised in the art of...
Well, this is what... You know, you read all these stories now about these rock stars going into rehab, and, you know, somebody must take them aside at some point and say, look, I think you're going off the rails, you know, you might want to go to the Priory or something. We were off the rails to start with. We were off the rails before we got a record deal.
Before temptation came your way.
I mean, we kind of arrived in London hammered, just out of it. Just like, come on, let's have it, do you know what I mean? And so it's never been a problem for... It's never been a problem for me and Liam, and it fascinates me that out of all the people that we hung out with, the only two people that have never been in rehab is me and Liam. Ever.
And why have you resisted that? I mean,
I kind of...
I mean,